Okay, it's Tuesday morning in Rawalpindi. The test match starts on Thursday, so we're a couple of days out. We're here in the press box, which is a new press box, I think, since last time I came. Certainly since last time you came, Nick Hoult of the Daily Telegraph. You were here for the 7-match T20 series, but that was your first visit in Pakistan for 20-odd years.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd ever come back. I was here in 2000 as a very young reporter. I just left my local newspaper and I got a job on a cricket website at the time. Obviously, you two were playing and I was too scared to ever ask Nasser a question. And yeah, I didn't think I'd ever come back, but I've been here twice in 3 months now.
And you've not been back since our tour in 2000, have you?
No,
to the country at all? You've not been here at all?
No, never been back at all. 2005 we did from the studio. I did from the studio in Sky. So first time back and, landed this morning. Cool, conditions are not what I expected. It was cool this morning. It's great to be back. We've been treated so friendly by people. Just checking in at the hotel, they seemed absolutely thrilled to have the England Test side back here.
Well, it's a long time ago, but what are your memories of that tour in 2000? It was quite a dramatic tour, wasn't it?
I can tell you my memories of this place. I got the worst LBW decision in the history, and I had some bad ones, I'll tell you. Wazim Akram, over the wicket, pitching like 7 yards outside leg, hit me on the pad. I was really going, 1 off 6 deliveries, given out, and I put my foot through the fridge in the dressing room in the far side. I think you were probably chuckling away somewhere, and I got a bill for the fridge the next day from Phil Neal, the England manager.
You'd have averaged 70 with DRS, wouldn't you?
Mate, I've had throughout this series, I'm going to be talking about the shocking decisions I got in my career.
What are your memories of that tour of 2000 from a journalist's perspective?
That game, I don't remember that decision actually. I don't think anyone does, but I do remember there was a riot outside the ground. And
when I got out.
And the police fired tear gas into the crowd. And I remember Alex Stewart and Marcus Trescothick were batting, and they were on their knees. You remember, they're wiping their eyes and all sorts of things. And so that was a baptism, thinking this tour's quite different from anything I've ever seen at a local newspaper. But I think the standout memory, apart from obviously winning in Karachi, is the trip we had at the Khyber Pass. We accompanied the team and went to the border with Afghanistan and went to the Smugglers Bazaar on the way back, and didn't appreciate it at the time, but what an experience.
Yeah, I remember that. We went up onto the Khyber Pass, we looked down into Kabul, didn't we? And the thing I remember about going into that bazaar that you mentioned, kind of big shopping arcade, wasn't it? The thing I remember most of all was that even in this quite remote place, they knew who we were. They knew everybody in the team. You'd go into a shop and they'd immediately recognise you. And you were struck by the passion of cricket, even in these quite remote areas in the northwest.
I hate to bring it up, but you played really well on that trip, didn't you? It was one of your finer trips as a batter.
For that, the memories of that win in the dark, all you see is you and Graham Thorpe with the kind of glory shot. You averaged about 2 in that series, but you were there. You were there for the glory moment. It was a remarkable end to a very dull game for a lot of it.
Yeah, and a very dull series, actually. It was 3 of the flattest pitches, almost like what they had out here a few months ago, or quite a bit ago now, when Pakistan played Australia. And I think a couple of the journos, Michael Henderson was one of them, had filed his copy and went home saying this was the most boring tour of all time. 3 turgid test matches. This is going to end 0-0. I don't want to see test cricket like this again. And he woke up the next morning and we'd won in the dark. So it was dramatic at the end, but there was some dull bits before that.
Yeah, I mean, from a journalist perspective, obviously 2 decades, the industry has changed. It's been upended, really, by the digitisation, and things will have been very different 20 years ago. From your perspective, now that you're an old kind of established correspondent, really, how has the job changed in that time?
Well, newspapers are digital companies now, first and foremost, probably more than they are print products. We have to contribute live blogs. You're constantly reporting for the website, which I don't think the guys would have even thought of 20 years ago. I think correspondents have changed. I think that we're now generally more all-rounders. We have to do news stories. You perhaps have to write more features, more interviews. I think in the past it would have been mainly a job reporting just on the action and telling people and analysing that. I think now there's a lot more pressure on being across your brief as a whole, and the game has changed. I mean, we were talking about this morning, weren't we? There's so much happening in cricket at the moment, be it with the 100, be it with county cricket, be it with the England team and the way they're playing, that keeping on top of it is it's fascinating, but it's also hard as well.
What about the relationships with the players, the way that the relationships between the press pack, and we've still got a good turnout here of English journalists as well as local journalists, obviously. What about that distinctive relationship between journalists and players? It would be, I would say, a more distant relationship now than before, in that players have got more help and more kind of layers of support around them. Would that be fair?
Yeah, they're all trained how to deal with the media now, which I guess probably didn't happen before, previous generations. I think one thing that's different, though, there's not the kind of pressure from tabloid newspapers for the sort of off-field stories there would have been in the 1980s during the circulation wars. So that's probably a bit easier for the players. Social media has clearly, obviously, changed everything. The ECB has its own channels. It wants to manage its own message and break its own news. The news that they want breaking anyway. So the players, I guess, it's a little bit more distant, but I think the relationship between this crop of players and the press is probably better than it has been my time, actually, better than it has been before.
Can you remember from all that time ago your responsibilities as an England captain here last night? I went to the British High Commission function last night, which we were kindly invited to. Ben Stokes was there with a number of the England players. He just announced that he'd given his tour fee to the flood victims. You wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. I can be absolutely certain of that. You can't get a drink out of you. Yeah. But, you know, and it was clear to me that he and the team actually recognised their broader responsibilities here. It's the first tour for 17 years, and there's all that context. But can you remember that as well from your days as England captain here?
Yeah, definitely. We had so many different responsibilities like that. We were closer to the press. I mean, I know it's not Christmas time at the moment yet, but there was always a Christmas do that we used to sort out with the written media, and we would fancy dress. You would have done fancy dress in Australia. I think for us, those High Commission do's actually were a lot of fun to get out of the bubble. On our tour, there was a lot of corridor cricket play. That one thing I remember of that tour of 2000, the result is, you know, has been well documented, was how we all got on as a squad. When you're in Pakistan, there's not the bar to go down to of an evening. There's not 57 different restaurants that you all go in separate ways, so you lose a bit of team spirit and team bonding. I remember the corridor where all the team were on either side, the doors were wide open, Thorpe and White and Giles would be playing something on their machines in their room, Xbox or something. We'd be playing corridor cricket. So we were fairly in a bubble. And then the High Commission do was when we went out, and you may be able to have a beer, you know, you'd meet and you'd socialise. There may be a pool table. You could go, and if you wanted, you know, Stewie would go and get himself a sausage and
boiled
egg or something, push the boat out. So they were really fun to get out of that bubble and in that environment where you're a little bit enclosed.
That tour, we won that test match in Karachi in the Dar. That's only one of two test match wins here in the country for England. Two in, well, 50 or 60 years. Why is this so difficult a place to win?
Well, first of all, pitches. So it's a difficult place to get a result, especially this time of year, and you may come onto it and we'll see it this week. It's a shorter day. You know, it goes dark at 4, as we saw in Karachi, and at this time of year, and they're reduced overs and the pitches. Do not confuse a tour of Pakistan with a tour of India or Sri Lanka. Those pitches deteriorate very quickly. Think of England's recent tour of India. Get them in the first innings, because second innings you're playing in a bunker. Here they stay very good for longer. And it's also the type of cricketers. So we produce cricketers like, who are our two greatest ever bowlers, Broad, Anderson, both of them. So sort of pitch
That's
up.
3.
Well, I had to add Beefy on the end of it, really. So thanks for picking me up on that. So you have sort of pitch-up swing bowlers. Here you need skiddy. I was just watching the Pakistan lads bowl out there. Quick arm, skiddy, trajectory, sort of kiss the surface, slingy actions, whack-ar, waz-in, get it reversing. So you need pace through the air, and then you need a bit of mystery spin. English cricketers produce seam up, hit the deck, and orthodox spin. So it's a completely different style of cricket and brand of cricket you need out here.
You've been looking a little bit back. I know you're writing a piece tomorrow about whether Bazball can succeed here, but in doing so you've been looking back at some of those past tours. There have been a lot of draws here, haven't there?
47%, I think we were talking about earlier. 47% of draws, higher than anywhere else in the world, and as you say, it's because of the conditions and the shortened hours of play. I think the average run rate's 2.2 and over.
You really need to get out more next.
It's a big
Who
piece.
needs Benedict?
I've got to get a lot of stuff in there. England were 4.4 and over in the summer, so we'll see how that works here.
Well, he was asked yesterday, wasn't he, Brendan McCullum, will Bazball, that term that he hates, will Bazball work in Pakistan? And he simply said, I don't know, we'll find out. What's your instinct around this young England team who like to play a fast-paced, high-pace game? How are they going to go?
Well, I don't think they're going to change. I think they figure that that's their only route to victory, probably their only route to staving off defeat as well. McCullum said to us that perhaps you've got to pick your moments a little bit wiser than perhaps they have to do at home, and you may have to sit in for longer, but also you may have to go harder than you do in England when you get that opportunity. So it'd be interesting to see whether they have that experience and that nous to know when that moment is.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's all linked, isn't it? Because it flat pitches, because of the shorter day, because of the 47% draws, Bazball becomes a bit more vital actually, because the quicker you get your runs gives you more time to get 20 wickets. I always go back to Strauss's team in Adelaide. You know, they got 500, but they got 500 so quickly because of a Peterson double 100 that they won, and 10 minutes after they won, it's massive storm at Adelaide. And if it wasn't for the rate they got their runs, they would have run out of time. So if they can score quickly, it just buys them time to get the 20 wickets.
He's not going to like it, but I think England come here to win, haven't they? They're not coming here to draw a test. I don't know whether in 2000 it was coming here and don't lose first, and then we'll see how we go on. I think here England have come to win.
I mean, it's a measure of how far the game has changed, really. I mean, our attitude in 2000, I don't think it was necessarily, we're aiming to draw games, but the attitude was very much stay in the game, and then something might happen at the end of it, and something did in the end. But that's not how this mob are going to go about it.
No, and they shouldn't do really. The pitches are flat, so it shouldn't inhibit stroke play. If anything, you'd think batting in England with the Duke's ball and the quality of fast bowling, you think if any time they would have gone backwards would have been in the summer. In fact, when they were bowled out by South Africa at Lords, you expected McCullum to say, we're going to have to think about it. And the press boys asked McCullum, what did you do wrong? He said, we didn't go hard enough.
Yeah.
So if they're going to go even harder in England when it's moving around, why wouldn't you? They could have Livingston coming in at 7 or 8 or wherever. That's a lot of batting. So the real focus then turns on to the 20 wickets and having the right type of bowler to get 20 wickets in these conditions.
Do they have the right type of bowler?
Well, in the absence of Wood, I'd say it's going to be a bit more of a grind. So Stokes' captaincy is vital. Reverse swing is absolutely vital. I look around that ground out there, it looks a little bit green. I think the next two venues might reverse a little bit more. I think Stokes, when it reverses, as he did in Cape Town when we won right at the end in Cape Town, when he leans away, angles in and moves it away, Stokes can be as good as anyone if his knee holds up. So I think Leach could be about 3 foot tall by the end of this trip, because he may have to bowl a lot of overs just to hold up an end. And Stokes has captained Leach brilliantly. So this will be the next stage for Stokes' captaincy of Leach away from home.
And they brought a young teenage leg spinner who is probably not going to play here, Nick, Rayan Ahmed. If he did, he'd become England's youngest ever Test cricketer. It's a remarkable story, really.
Sorry, who does he go past?
He would be younger than Brian Close, I think, if he played here. Have you seen much of him, first of all?
No.
And neither has Brendan McCullum, as he admitted yesterday. So what he's doing is relying on the eyes and ears of people like David Court, who's the player ID lead, Mo Bobat, who's in charge of the pathways, Rob Keeb. I don't know how much Keys has seen of him either on the golf course.
It's a draw off the first.
What about our selection? It's an amazing selection. It's a great adventure for Rayan Ahmed. What about the balance of risk and reward in selecting a young man 3 first-class games into a career?
well, I know he hates the term, but it's a Bazball selection, isn't it? It's a sort of on the front foot and pull a surprise and pull a rabbit out of the hat. I think he's obviously here for the experience. When we spoke to McCullum yesterday, he said, well, what's the alternative? We have a system at home that doesn't help produce spin bowlers. It doesn't really promote spin in county cricket for various reasons. We may as well bring him here where he can learn to play the red ball game, and we have a strong senior core that can look after him if it gets a bit tough. I just don't think he's going to be more than a net bowler, really. And we actually expected him to be here as a net bowler. The surprise was adding him to the squad full time, and I guess that also shows the lack of alternatives. They've picked Will Jacks and Liam Livingstone. Jacks, I think, averages 40 odd in first class cricket with the ball. Livingstone hasn't picked up a red ball for 2 years. They haven't really got anyone else.
There's an echo of Ian Salisbury actually with Rayan Ahmed, who in 1993 the India tour, you weren't on it, but I was there. And Graham Gooch brought Sols in as a net bowler initially, and then he leapfrogged over Tuffers and Embers and played in the first test in Calcutta. That was a long time ago.
I think the only thing I'd say about it is don't pick him just because he's a leg spinner, because he's
like
a wrist
you
spinner.
and Chris Schofield.
Like me and Chris Schofield, and like English cricket historically. We do that all the time. We need a leg spinner, so he must play. Is he good enough to play? Have a look at him in the nets, speak to the right people, and if he is good enough to play, then do what Asian sides do. Play, Shivaram Krishna, India, was he 16 or whatever? Play him when they're young, but not just because he's a leg spinner. He's got to be good enough to play.
I would.
Pakistan picked Danish Canaria on that tour in 2000, didn't they? And he was very young, 17, 18, just threw him in for a test match. But England know a lot more about these players now, don't they, these days, too? Like you say, Mo Bobat, David Court, the performance analysts, they're not totally unknown. I know McCullum had never seen him bowl before, and clearly they wanted McCullum to look at him in the Lions on the Lions trip last week before putting him in the squad. But I don't think it's a total unknown.
I was struck by something Brendan McCullum said to me yesterday, actually. I interviewed him down on the pitch there, and I asked him about Liam Livingstone, who I think is a good chance of making his debut here, which is an interesting story. I might just touch on him in a minute. But he said the phrase he used was, the skipper has done a great job of coercing Livingstone to play. I thought that was an interesting phrase because, of course, Livingstone could be playing in the Big Bash. Six-figure sum on offer, and he's turned that down to come here. And it struck me that one of the important contexts of this tour is that there's a young group of English batsmen there who are multi-format, like Livingstone, Duckett, who's back, Jacks, Brook. These are all format players, aren't they? And if Test cricket grabs them, if this series grabs them and shows them what the 5-day game can be, there's a chance there to hold them in all formats rather than just seeing a number of these players disappear to T20 and not quite realising at the end of their career what the 5-day game is all about.
Yeah, and I guess it's linked to the brand that, Rob Key, when he first came in, spoke about the brand of cricket. And I think it's linked to that because for what everyone saw in the summer, if you're out of that setup, if you're out of what Stokes and Bairstow and Root, we were out there. You got your phone out for your lad Josh, and you were videoing Root bat.
And like he reverse second ball.
He reverse scooped it over third man for 6 or whatever. So if you're out of that inner clique of Test match cricketers who are want to play like this, your game suits that. Duckett, Livingstone, these sort of Jacks, and B, it looks like fun. It doesn't look like a bit of a boring. The 2000, let's sit in there and let's nip it at the end, because there are financial decisions as well. However much you don't like it, it should just be about playing for England. But also, I know you wrote really well about it the last couple of days, about where we are. We are in Pakistan. This place, how much cricket means to this place and how much Test match cricket means to this place. I do think it is quite nice that some of our younger batters are here playing Test match cricket and showing the value of Test match cricket. They may at the end of the series go, you know what, that was a bit tough for me, I'll go down the white ball route. But I think it is a great statement that Stokes and McCullum have got Livingstone, got Duckett, got these multi-format players buying into the brand of Test match cricket they want to play.
It was something that Ben Duckett touched on actually with a piece with one of our colleagues, Vish from Crick Info. He chatted to Ben Duckett over in Abu Dhabi, I think, and Ben was saying, well, as a top order player, or someone who bats in the first three, looking at England over the last few years, it's been very tough in England, the ball nipping around, and he kind of said, it didn't look that much fun. Whereas now, under Stokes and McCullum, he's the type of player, Ben Duckett, that wants to be a part of it, and he's going to get his go here at the top of the order.
Yeah, I think also that when we talk about the future of Test cricket and worry about it people losing interest, I think I've never really thought supporters in England in particular would ever fall out of love with Test cricket. I think it's part of the tradition of cricket in England, and people love the game. It was the players that were the worry. Would the really top players still want to go through and play Test cricket because it's hard, because they can make more money playing T20, and T20 looks like fun to play. Test cricket hasn't looked like fun in England the last few years. So to see Duckett be desperate to play Test cricket is a great thing, and that's credit to Stokes and credit to him making this England team a place where you want to be. You want to be on this journey with them.
Can I just throw in one caveat though, one proviso? Still, the currency is runs. You look at Alex Lees. He played in the Caribbean the way he wanted to play. He then last summer played the way Stokes and McCullum wanted to play, and he didn't get the runs that were required, and you're axed. So if I was giving any kind of advice to any young player, you're only going to be judged on the runs, not the way you play. However much Stokes and McCullum says we want these type of players, if you get runs, Alistair Cook, those sort of players can still play in this set side because they got the run. So go and get that. Is still your currency for staying in the side.
I completely agree with that. The point I was trying to make was a bit broader, really, though, on the importance of Stokes to this project. It's a bit like Virat Kohli in India. Kohli is the most important cricketer in India, and therefore probably the world, was very much, I still think Test cricket is a worthwhile thing to be involved in, and therefore young players followed that. And Stokes saying to Livingston, come on, forget the 150 grand in the Big Bash, come and play Test cricket for us in Pakistan. It's a very hard man to say no to, Ben Stokes. So having a player of that kind of stature and charisma and importance that still values the 5-day game is a big
completely
thing.
And it sends a message not to Livingston but everyone underneath. Your lad coming through the ranks at Middlesex or whatever, everyone underneath, it sends that message out. But better than anyone, it's more fun when you're doing well. So Jason Roy's been tried in that sort of role in the Ashes. Go out and see if you can do it. It only works when you're getting runs and you're having fun, because otherwise Test match, as we know, this becomes tough. Mentally, you better make sure that you're doing this for the right reasons, because this format will test you more than any other format. I can guarantee you that. If you're not buying into it completely, by the end, there's always that eye on the slightly easier option of white ball cricket.
Right. Prediction. What's going to happen?
I think just England. But that's ridiculous, because you've just told me in 5 million years we've only won 2 tests. But I think just England, 1-0 in the dark in Karachi.
Okay, and a day like this, with 2 days out, it's preview day for the print journalists, isn't it? Because the game starts so early on a Thursday, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning Thursday. So you have to do your preview Tuesday for Wednesday. So this is a busy day for you.
It is, and we're about to speak to Ben Stokes. He talks to us a day before he will talk to the broadcasters for that very reason. So I'm going to ask all the questions now. I've just going to take them all from what Nasser's just been saying. And so, today's the day we try and set up the series and try and work out what's going to happen.
Result prediction?
I like to think that we'll actually get more results than we normally get in Pakistan. I think Pakistan will probably just shade the series, but I think England will win a Test match.
Okay, it should be absolutely fascinating. 3 Test match series. England haven't been here for 17 years. It all kicks off very early Thursday morning UK time.